Democrats are continuing to host these chaotic protests in an effort to stop President Trump and Elon Musk. But this time it's interesting. Instead of them screaming and crying, they're now singing. Take a look.
This is a song for all of those dreamers. We're looking for answers to come our way. Scientists, doctors, students, all seekers. We share in the hopes for a much brighter day. Come on now. Well, this is a song for all the good people. All the good people who are part of this family.
Now, that is the former NIH director under the Obama administration, so no surprise there. And he deserves the criticism, okay? They're out there trying to protest RFK Jr., obviously, and the entire Trump administration, but there's only one problem. They don't have any moral superiority here. They definitely cannot argue that the country is healthier because of their decision-making. In fact, we're the sickest country, but we happen to be the richest country. How does that make sense exactly? So when they go out there and they try to protest, they're doing this from a place of weakness, and it's not relatable to the average American, especially when you hear what they want science to truly be all about, which is this.
We have to stand up, but not just for science. We need to stand up for trans people who will not be erased. We need to stand up for black and brown people who are being targeted by anti-DEI policies. We need to stand up for immigrants who are being threatened with deportation. We need to stand up for Palestinians who are experiencing a genocide. We have to stand up and fight back. Not just for some grant funding, but for the future of our communities that are under attack.
Every single day it becomes abundantly clear how they see the world. They believe everyone is a victim, and that we need to fight and stand up to this invisible boogeyman, I suppose. And of course, to them, that's President Trump and Elon Musk and the entire administration. But really, that's not the case. And if you treat people like a victim, how will they ever learn how to be a hero? Think of this for a second. If you continue to put conditions in place that make the American people dependent on government officials, then that means they can never be independent. It's just common sense. Now, here is Congressman Jamie Raskin calling out Speaker Johnson's chief of staff for getting a DUI and trying to make a joke out of it using the topic of DEI.
You know, I noticed that the Speaker's chief of staff was picked up on DUI the other night. They're not that into DEI, but they love DUI. We got to stop those DUI hires on Capitol Hill.
Now, obviously, he's the one that would laugh at that, and people like him because they believe DEI is a good thing, and they have ignored the results of DEI, which has not actually been helpful. It's actually been hurtful. Now, the only way it has been helpful, if you really want to make an argument here, is in people's pocketbooks. I mean, imagine corporate America, how much money was made? How much money did the federal government hand out in the name of DEI? Think about USAID, right? And DOGE. So while Democrats are so focused on their petty protests, President Trump is focused on keeping his promise by wrapping up this war between Ukraine and Russia. It's not going to happen tonight, but they're getting closer than they've ever been. And he had this message this morning on Truth Social. Based on the fact that Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I'm strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. To Russia and Ukraine, get to the table right now before it is too late. Thank you. And then later in the day, when he was speaking to reporters, he said this.
I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine. And they don't have the cards. They don't have the cards. As you know, we're meeting in Saudi Arabia on sometime next week, early. And we're talking, would I find that in terms of getting a final settlement, it may be easier dealing with Russia, which is surprising because they have all the cards. I mean, they're bombing the hell out of them right now. And I put a statement in, a very strong statement. Can't do that. Can't do that.
Mr. President,
we're trying to help them. And Ukraine has to get on the ball and get a job done.
Now, in regards to this entire debate, what the left believes is happening versus what President Trump has been saying, is that probably the first time in history we really have a president who's transparent about what his intentions truly are. President Trump is being pretty consistent here. He said he was going to do this. He's clearly has been working at doing it to the point where he had to change his tune about Russia. And I think this is the problem with Democrats. They just don't know how to react to it. Now, here's what his national security advisor, Mike Waltz, had to say.
The president has been crystal clear, and he's been clear to all sides. The fighting has to stop. Both sides need to get to the table. We had a good engagement. Both leaders have said only President Trump could do so, and only he has been able to do so. We had an initial engagement with the Russians. The Ukrainians had a great opportunity to bind our economies together through that mineral deal. Unfortunately, that didn't go so well, but we think we're going to get things back on track. Secretary Rubio, myself and the Ukrainian delegation will be meeting in Saudi Arabia next week to get these talks back on track, get a ceasefire in place, and drive peace home.
And the one thing I always want to remind Democrats, it's under Joe Biden that Putin got really greedy here and decided to launch a full-scale invasion into Ukraine. And it wasn't Joe Biden who could get him to the negotiation table. So, no matter how much they scream and how loud they are, the results are not on their side. And that's how President Trump has been handling Putin and Zelensky. Now, in regards to President Trump handling leaders of other countries, what about Canada? So by now, you probably know Justin Trudeau failed to convince President Trump to remove the tariffs from Canada. And now, today, President Trump has doubled down and said he's going to impose 250% tariff on dairy and milk. Hear it for yourself.
250% for dairy products, tariff. So where do you hear that? You don't hear that. They have a tremendously high tariff. Give you the exact numbers in a little while coming out on lumber. So they sell us lumber. They have a tremendous tariff. They make it impossible for us to sell lumber or dairy products into Canada. But our numbers are a tiny fraction of that, almost non-existent. And what we're doing is freeing up our forests from the environmental nonsense that they put on them, where you can't cut down a tree. And we have to cut down trees in order to build the firewalls. And those trees are sold. But we're freeing it up on an emergency basis because Canada has been ripping us off for years on tariffs for lumber and for dairy products. 250%. Nobody ever talks about that.
He's absolutely correct in the amount of tariffs Canada has against us. But of course, the media won't talk about that because they have a narrative to push. And that is President Trump doesn't know what he's doing with tariffs. He's going to kill the economy. He's going to make prices go up. And they speak as if none of that already happened with Joe Biden, right? That's the fascinating part about all of this. And that's why nobody actually believes anything that they say. And I have an example for you. The jobs report came out this morning, and it's favorable numbers for America and particularly President Trump. But MSDNC is not going to spin it that way. They're sticking to their scare tactics.
We've got the new jobs numbers out today, and they're showing job growth was weaker than expected last month, but fairly stable. Do you think the economy can withstand the uncertainty of what's going on, especially when it comes to tariffs? What are your constituents telling you? What are you hearing from consumers who are already starting to pay more for everyday goods?
Well, we're obviously in the middle of a Trump-inflicted recession, certainly headed towards one. That same jobs report was preceded by the report that we're actually employers are cutting more jobs than have been created. So we're going in the wrong direction. On top of President Trump campaigning and saying he was going to make life more affordable and cut prices on day one. He's not done that. Instead, he's made things more expensive by imposing tariffs and then made it the economy even more uncertain and erratic by the on-again, off-again tariffs, which are obviously because he can't stand the political fallout, which is obvious from how much the cost of an automobile in this country would go up with those tariffs. So there's a reason that the stock market is plummeting, that prices are going up, that the economy is on very uncertain ground, that people are losing their jobs.
Now, I'm not surprised by the way way they're trying to spin this entire story. President Trump is not the person who made everything more expensive. That was Joe Biden. Let's just be clear about that. Secondly, the stock market has not plummeted. Okay. Overall, if you look at the last 12 months, it is still higher than it was January of 2024. And that's the thing about the way that the media likes to talk about the stock market. If one day it drops, they use fear to make you believe, oh my God, this is the lowest it's ever been. Not even close. Now, here's what President Trump had to say about the jobs report.
Big gains for native-born Americans for the first time in 15 months. The job gains for native-born Americans, for American people born in America, exceeded job gains for migrant and foreign-born workers. This is the first time that's happened in more than 15 months. Employment for native-born workers went up by 284,000, while foreign-born workers went down by 87,000. Now, you've heard the same stat where foreign workers were taking up all the jobs or almost all the jobs. In some cases, literally all of the jobs.
And here's what Lee Zeldin had to say. Today's job report shows the auto industry gained 9,000 new jobs in February. The president is leading the charge, and we are doing everything in our power to bring back American auto jobs and restore this industry. This is how we power the great American comeback. So, of course, they lie about President Trump. They spin the news about these topics. They use scare tactics. And you know what else they do? They tug on your heartstrings. Because not just federal workers losing their jobs. I guess they have realized that doesn't work. Now what they're doing is veterans who are federal employees are losing their jobs. Here's an example of that.
I think this important fact should sink in for everyone. Donald Trump, in his first month in office, has fired more veterans than any president in history. I mean, this is while the VA is in the midst of ramping up to serve millions of veterans who now are entitled to PACT Act health care benefits because they were exposed to toxins during their service, thanks to President Biden and congressional Democrats. And on top of that, just the other day, a senior advisor of his actually defended the firings, saying that there are some veterans that don't deserve their jobs. Now they're doubling down, and they're planning to fire more than 80,000 veterans, as you said, 80,000 VA employees. And how is it possible that they're going to not cut health care benefits and be able to provide those PACT Act benefits that we promised them and the kind of service that we promised veterans when they return home?
So you already know she's being disingenuous, okay? What they're trying to do is say that because Biden passed the PACT Act, we need all these people we've already hired in the VA to be able to deliver that service. Now, I'm under the impression that's not necessarily true. And if you're a veteran out there, I'm sure you would agree with me. I don't think the problem is we don't have enough people. I just think the problem is the quality and the processes and the hoops we have to jump through to get the service we need. You can't keep trying to hire people thinking that's going to solve the problem if the process is messed up. So I understand where she's trying to go with that narrative. Now, I suppose that strategy isn't going to work for people who do their research. And so the last thing they do is they have to make up stories in order to divide the people within the Trump administration. Here's a reporter asking Trump about the fake news story where they claim there was a clash between Elon Musk and Marco Rubio.
Since you last spoke about it yesterday, some details have come out about your cabinet meeting with Elon Musk and some clashes eventually between Secretary Rubio and Secretary.
No clash. I was there. You're just a troublemaker. And you're not supposed to be asking that question because we're talking about the World Cup. Elon gets along great with Marco, and they're both doing a fantastic job. There is no clash.
Mr. President, bottom line,
Who are you with? Who are you with?
NBC.
Oh, no wonder. That's enough. NBC.
Who has more authority, Elon Musk or your cabinet secretary?
Any other questions?
Now, what's so bad about the media sometimes is they need to read the room. President Trump is standing next to a gentleman in regards to FIFA and the World Cup. But I guess the media can't help themselves. They got to get that soundbite, and it just looks bad every single time. Now, that's not the only stunt they tried to pull today. The other stunt was with his son, Donald Trump Jr., where a network came out and lied about Donald Trump Jr. wanting to run to be the next president in 2028. Here is that story. Now, this story was published today by Mediaite, okay? And it says exclusive, Donald Trump Jr. considering a run for president in 2028. And of course, they juice up the story by trying to remind the reader how President Trump was asked about J.D. Vance and would he endorse him to be the next president. And obviously, the president said, wait a minute, it's way too early. The answer is no, which makes sense. Now, you know, the media, they always use anonymous sources. 3 high-level sources told Mediaite that Donald Trump Jr., the eldest son and the omnipresent MAGA evangelist across the internet, is seriously considering a run for president in 2028. And what's fascinating is they bury his actual quote all the way at the bottom here, where it says, I accurately predicted that my buddy JD would be an instant power player in national GOP politics. So your theory is that I worked my butt off to help get him the VP nomination because I want to run for president in 2028. Are you effing retarded? I'm actually glad you're printing this BS, though, because at least now the rest of the press corps will see how crappy your sources are and how easily you're played by them. Congrats, moron. That's what Don Jr. had to say, and I concur. All right, so why don't you guys answer this in the comments section below. What do you think of the Democratic Party's new strategy? They, I guess, now are singing in an effort to protest President Trump and Elon Musk. Let me know your thoughts about that in the comment section below. Republicans have now called for Congressman Al Green to be removed from all committees. Well, the House Minority Leader did not like that, so he uploaded a video to social media, and I think you're going to want to see it. So if you're interested in that, click on the video because it's coming up right now.